Nothing. You guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear him. And welcome back to Broadway 50/50 for the UIW Coaches Show. I'm Sam Kamen alongside my co-host Katie Goodman, and we've got a special guest today, head women's basketball coach Jeff Doe and
Or Dow, Sam.
I
That's
knew,
okay.
I knew
That's
I
all
was
right.
going to get that wrong.
That's okay. You're
Two
fine.
ways you could have gone with that,
Oh, man.
unfortunately.
And I asked and I said it right the
That's
first
okay.
time.
That's
but
all right. You're
Jeff-
nervous. You got jitters a little bit, Sam. You're all right.
Head coach Jeff Dow with us. Coach, thank you very much for taking some time for us.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Good to be here, and good to have our team here tonight as well. A little team function, and they always enjoy a free meal and something besides the cafeteria. So.
Can't go wrong with Broadway
Yep.
50/50. So, Coach, fourth year here at UIW. How are you liking San Antonio and the university itself?
Love it. Great place to be. You know, obviously for our entire family, my wife and our two little girls as well. In fact, my wife is actually a assistant professor in kinesiology here at UIW as well
awesome.
too. So that's great to have both of us on the same campus as well, and it's just been a great fit. You know, this is obviously having some familiarity. Richard Duran, our AD, we were both at Louisiana Monroe back in the day together, so we've known each other for a little while. Two members of my staff have been with me at Louisiana Monroe and UIW in both Amber Cunningham and Bev Holmes. So it's good to have that familiarity, and you know, we're excited about what we're in the process of building here.
Well, and it started from year one. I mean,
Yep.
you took a team, won 14 games, biggest jump from 5 to 14 games in that first year.
Right.
And I mean, you finished third in the Southland, and you're the Southland Conference away from going to the NCAA championship before COVID happens.
Right.
And then 2 years later, you go on and actually win the Southland
Yeah.
Conference. Just how special is this program? And
It really has been special. The first year, you know, when we got here, I remember addressing that team. You know, I'm new to them; they're new to me. You know, they were coming off of back-to-back 5 and 24 seasons, and I said, you know, at that time the Southland had 13 schools, and I said, ladies, I know how coaches think. We're going to be picked to finish 13th, and as I jokingly said, a distant 13th, and we were, you know, and to end up, you know, going from 5 wins, as you said, to 14 wins, finishing 6th, and you know, top half of the conference, and it was crazy. We were literally, that was the first time UIW had ever qualified, you know, for the Southland tournament. We're about 2 hours away from playing. I mean, I've just put the suit and tie on, ready to go, and a couple of my assistant coaches were scouting at the 11 a.m. game, and get that call, you know, that was tough, you know, and that team had, I believe, 7 seniors on it, and then one young lady that we knew that was kind of retiring, if you will, from basketball, and that was a tough conversation, you know, just like that, your career is over, you know, and obviously they had worked really hard, and we felt really good that particular year with the draw that we got, because we had actually beaten each of the teams we would have played, you know, to get all the way to the championship game, but didn't happen, you know, obviously. But then the second year, which, you know, a lot of those young ladies are here tonight with us, and they're now juniors. They were freshmen, you know, in 2021. So going back to COVID again, you know, we had 11 games canceled that year. We played 15 games total. You know, ordinarily you're going to play 30-plus games, but we played in the we made it to the conference tournament, and we played, you know, and I remember telling them, especially with all those freshmen. I said, ladies, this may sound really odd to say, but, for 6 and 9, we had a heck of a season, with all the quarantining and everything we had to do. And then, of course, jumping ahead to last year and a special year to have the run that we had down the stretch. And it was a weird situation because we knew we had some tough losses, against the teams in the top 4, spots in the standings. And a lot of them were one-possession games down to the final minute. I know this may sound kind of odd to say, but in spite of that, we were really confident because, we knew we were close. We knew we were on the cusp of doing something. We weren't intimidated or in awe of anything like that. And we, going into that first game in the conference tournament, I made a joke about, ladies, this is the biggest game in UIW history. We've never won a game, in the conference tournament. So that was kind of the recurring line with all 4 games, this Southland biggest game in school history. And just obviously to, win 4 games in 4 days and have people step up the way that they did and just really clutch. And then, a couple days later, we're playing in the NCAA tournament. So our 5th game in 7 days, it was almost surreal.
Well, to talk about it, I mean, it almost didn't happen because you had to hit a buzzer beater in the first game.
Yep.
And then in the championship game, you win an overtime thriller. And so it was clutch.
It was. In that first game, we were down, 5, I think, with 13 seconds left. I mean, that's, in my head, I'm already crafting the post-game speech and say, well, let's learn from the, all that. And Jocelyn Moore ends up hitting back-to-back threes, one obviously at the buzzer and propel us to the next round of the tournament. And from that point, I hesitate to use a gambling term here at UIW, but as I said, we're playing with house money. There's no pressure. Pressure's off. We've won the first game and just go out, have fun, relax. And we really felt like it helped us with each game we went into. We played loose, we played confident. We had already won the day before, so we kind of knew, what we were up against. Obviously, each of those teams, we'd already played them twice, during the regular season. So we knew what they were about. And I don't think we were really nervous until we got to the championship game. And we were joking about it a few weeks ago. The score at the end of the first quarter was 5-5, and I said, of course, I'm talking about defense, kept us in the game, and it was, that game was just strange, the end of regulation, we basically, it's as good as done, and we've got it won, and had an unfortunate turnover, just like that, Southeastern Louisiana takes the lead, and then we hit, 2 clutch free throws, I think with like a half a second left to send the game into overtime, and then basically won the game in the final minute. So, but great, obviously for a university that hasn't been Division I for very long, I think maybe 10 years, and not, especially in the women's basketball side, hadn't had much success, as they made the transition. And so it helps, from a recruiting perspective. Obviously, you get the attention of recruits and parents and coaches and whatnot that they know they can go to UIW and have something special like that happen.
It's got to feel really good, like not just getting to the tournament, but being able to win that first game.
Right.
And it has to make you feel like you at least belong there.
Yep.
So, something had to have been, pulled from that experience, even though it was cut short.
And that's a great way of saying it, Katie, because we didn't want to, as we said, we're not just here just to play our one game and go home. Like, we're here to win, and we're here to compete. I know the other, and that's probably very cliche, and the other teams are thinking the same thing, but it's true, and it was still a relatively young team with a lot of sophomores looking at last year's team, and like I said, the year before, being freshmen, they don't think they really knew much of it. They're kind of naive about the whole process and everything, and I think, like I said, they were going into the tournament confident. We knew what the draw was going to be with the different buys and whatnot, and that's, as I said, we just clear the hurdle, win the first game, and then we'll see what happens, and go from there.
Do you think that growing up process from sophomores to juniors, freshmen, sophomores, so forth, do you think that had something to do with your success last season? Or what was like that key game changer?
Absolutely. I can remember, we lost a really tough game when a lot of these guys were freshmen. It was a, one possession game at Lamar, and I was looking at the stats, and between injuries and people that tested positive for COVID that particular day.
man.
I think we suited up 7 players, and 5 of them were freshmen, and they had each played, I want to say, a minimum of 28 minutes. And I remember, I was texting all 5 of them on the bus on the way home saying, this is going to help you so much and help us so much, and kind of a baptism under fire, if you will, but it did help, going into their sophomore years. And again, it was, the unfortunate part was, you're typically, like I said, you're normally going to play 30-plus games. We played 15, and one of our young ladies, Chloe Storr from Australia, who was a freshman 2 years ago, because between Australia, United States, all the different rules, poor kid couldn't get here until December 12th. And she's trying to watch, practices online. Well, that's not quite the same, than watching it on the video and
The technology, right?
It is, exactly. But she did a great job of picking everything up. And literally, when she showed up on the night of December 12th, 2020, we were quarantined. So the poor kid had to go sit in a dorm room by herself for 10 days or whatever it was. And
it has to be scary being away from family, too, and just the whole 9 yards.
Exactly.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah,
wow.
and so a lot of those stories, we still, dealt with it a little bit last year and had some games canceled, but nothing. I mean, I added it up at one point that year 2021. Depending on which player you're talking about, they missed a minimum of 50 practices. I mean, just think about, I don't care who you are, especially with freshmen, to miss 50. So really, it's like last year was almost an extension of their freshman year. And I said, it wasn't until about Christmas time that we were sophomores, at that point in time. But they handled it well, I mean, again, I know it's been stressful nationwide, and for everybody, but like I said, they have the right approach. And this we got a lot of new faces with this team, but really coachable group. It's been a lot of fun. It's a very, I was telling Sam earlier off the air, very unique group. We have 10 girls from Texas, 1 from Australia, 1 from Spain, 1 from Bulgaria, and 1 from Puerto Rico. So it's
wow. Your recruiting process must be something else.
It's different, yeah. So I've been working on my Spanish a little bit here and there, but bits and pieces.
Well, and to lead into that, I think you're starting to read off my list here.
Go ahead, Sam. I don't mean to take
your
thunder.
But you talk about those new faces. You went into the transfer portal, got 2 girls as well as 6 incoming freshmen. And one of the things you wanted to do was build a cohesive group. How do you think during this off-season time they've come together?
Outstanding. And that's one of the things that, you worry about a lot of things as a coach, most of which you can't always control, but it was great to see how well they bonded because they were all here in July, with one exception. Paloma was still in Spain, so she couldn't get over here until middle of August, but the team chemistry right away, how well they like each other, they like being around each other. And I tell you what, I'm just, as somebody that's going on their 33rd year of coaching women's basketball at college level, that helps a ton. When they like each other and get along, everything just goes a lot smoother. And it's still, obviously a learning process especially for the freshmen, but even, for example, Yuli Velcheva from Bulgaria, she's, if you want to call her a super senior, she's in her, she got the COVID bonus year. In her
Coming from one
year.
side of San Antonio to the other.
To another. And we are literally her 4th different coaching staff she's had in 4 years. She was at a junior college at Western Nebraska, played for one staff at UTSA her junior year, then a new staff her senior year, and now she's with us. So it's been an adjustment, for even girls like her and actually the young lady from Puerto Rico, Nina De Leon. We are her 3rd different coaching staff. She had 2 different coaching staffs at Austin Peay. So, but they've handled it really, really well. And like I said, it's not pulling teeth, to get them to play hard and be good teammates, and that's part of the joy of it.
Is there a sense of, because it's a new team, that they're, like you said, playing with house money, you can play looser, or is because y'all won that Southland Conference that there's a target on your back everywhere you go?
I'm sure there will be a target. They don't know it yet, especially with so many newcomers. And, I try not to bring it up too often. Obviously the returners know what it's all about. I think kind of the way that we took the tournament by storm, if you will. I don't think anybody's going to sleep on us, and overlook us. I wouldn't think, but so I'm sure there's definitely going to be a little extra motivation, especially for a couple of the teams that we were, we were playing outstanding, but a couple of the teams we beat handily, in the conference tournament, and then. A team like Southeastern Louisiana is going to probably feel that they should have won, what have you. But like I said, I think we'll get everybody's best effort, I would imagine.
And one more thing, talking about taking the tournament by storm, one of the cool things is y'all were, the tournament itself expanded from 64 to 68, so y'all had a play-in game, even though y'all were an automatic bid. And with being a 16 seed, y'all went to Columbia and got to play to have the chance to play on the eventual national champion in South Carolina. Got to meet Don Staley. How was that experience?
Incredible. I'm obviously happy that the women's, that the NCAA expanded the field, to make it 68, similar to the men. And, for us, we actually played in the first ever First Four, game. And, of course, it was on ESPN, national TV and all that. We were disappointed to lose, went down to the final minute. But it was incredible. We walk off the court, and there's Don Staley, all of her players, all of her staff. They're lining up the tunnel, as we're heading to the lot. Like, you don't expect that.
That's awesome.
And literally that night, Destiny Terrell, one of our returning players, obviously she had tweeted something to the effect of, I'm really sad, the season's over, but I'm really sad I didn't get to take a picture with @Don Staley, and Don responded in some sort of way, and it's like 10:45, I'm not really thinking PM, and I'm really thinking she's going to respond. I'm going to give it a shot, and I tweet at her and said, hey, we're going to be coming by your campus tomorrow at 8:30 before we head to the airport. The Asia Wilson statue is right in front of the arena, and hey, our girls and our staff would love to see it if you can make it. I'm not even thinking she's going to respond, and I'd say within 30 seconds, she said, I'll be there, Jeff, and unbelievably patient, talking with our team, taking picture after picture, but yeah, a great experience. I'm aging myself here a little bit, and I can remember I was a young coach watching Don Staley play in the Final Four when she played at the University of Virginia, and it was funny when we got off the bus and we were walking towards the statue, and I was with my wife, Emily, and our kids, Chloe and Helena, and I see this little diminutive woman, getting out of this massive SUV, and she's got her little dog, and I'm thinking, who is that? Like who? And then like all of a sudden, like, oh my, it's Don Staley, but like I said, she probably spent 45 minutes with our team. She had a game the next day, the first round of the NCAA tournament, so for her to take the time to do that and things like that are what helps you grow the game, and women's basketball has really gained a lot of momentum, certainly in the last couple of years, both with the WNBA and USA basketball, and obviously college basketball as well too, and she's one of the true ambassadors of the game, and so it was just a great experience all the way around.
Not just speaking to that, you said you've coached for 33 years, and we're talking about how the women's game has progressed. What are some of the bigger changes you've seen? We know there's a lot more attendance, there's a lot more viewership, but there's a lot of things popping up in the news that are both good and bad. So, like, in your opinion, from what you've seen from start to finish, what do you think is maybe the bigger challenge for these athletes going into the professional setting?
Well, I think, first of all, in terms of the growth of the game, I think one of the immediate things I would say is just the parity. There was a long stretch. It was UConn or Tennessee, and that's it. Maybe Stanford. Now it's not unrealistic to go 15 or 20 deep. The best teams in the country, any of those could possibly make it to the Final Four. You see more upsets. You see a 12 seed knocking off a 5 seed. Like, you would never have seen that as recently as probably 10 years ago. So that's, obviously the game has evolved when there's, better teams. There's more depth, with the teams. The challenge on the professional level is, and for lack of a better term, there's only so many spots. There's only so many teams. And, typically they're going to have maybe at most 12 players, on each WNBA team at most. And so it's kind of squeezing, the opportunities. And it's getting difficult even in some cases for really talented players just to find jobs in Europe. Forget, let alone the WNBA, but just to find a pro team. And we had one of our, it was our first year here. Imani Robinson was a senior, former first team all conference, and she's going on her second year playing professionally in Spain, and those are hard to get, and so that's I think maybe the next challenge, if you will, is can we get the WNBA to expand, and if there's a market for that, I think that would be great, because the talent level's there. The teams are deeper than what they once were. Again, there's even more parity in the WNBA as well. Yeah,
and then you have big names like Becky Hammond that are right here in your city. I mean, have you, what has her influence been for women's basketball here specifically?
Ironically, I used to coach at Colorado State. Now, I didn't coach Becky Hammond. I was a couple of years removed from. I met her once, but she came to one like a postseason banquet of ours. But you look at, and she really kind of embodies like what you can become. Whether it's a kid that was lightly recruited and finds a way to play Division I basketball and become a really good player. I mean, she's coming from, I'm going to mix them up, whether it's South Dakota or North Dakota. It's one of the two with, maybe one offer, maybe two, Colorado State and somebody else. And she's 5'5"-ish, 5'6", probably being a little generous. And obviously one of the legends of our game, and obviously what she did for the San Antonio organization in New York, and now, of course, Las Vegas, and obviously being a pioneer is a women's coach coaching in the NBA, for all those years with the Spurs. And I'm a little biased. Growing up in Oregon, I'm a Portland Trailblazers fan.
I was going to ask that next.
So I really wish, no offense to Chauncey Billups, I really wish we would have hired Becky Hammond when we had the chance. But yeah, I mean, she's been tremendous for the game as well.
So you mean you're an Aces fan already?
I'm a what now?
You're a Las Vegas Aces
absolutely.
fan.
So I've enjoyed watching their playoff run, and some of the, as coaches, we steal everything. So I was literally, I'm pausing the TV and writing some of their plays down, and we'll probably have something called Ace, I would imagine, or Vegas or something. That'll be a set play. We try to pay tribute to who we stole it from.
Exactly.
Heck yeah.
So
I'm super excited to see that, and hopefully recap it, because we'll be on those games as well.
Exactly.
Chit chat about what's happening, and but just getting back to this season, and in what ways are you preparing, because it's still really early. First game isn't until November 7th. So what are some of the things that you're doing right now to just brace yourself?
Well, I know, especially probably for our freshmen, I try not to overwhelm them, and I'm already thinking about tomorrow's practice plan. There's like 3 more new things going in, but I mean, you've got to, you look at it by November 7th, our first game, so you have to have a certain number of man-to-man plays, zone plays, basing out of bounds. You got to be able to have press, how to break a press, and you're trying to. You're not trying to get everything in by November 7th, obviously, but just, enough, so that we're ready. And then we actually open up with Our Lady of the Lake. And then 3 days later, we're playing Baylor. So, one of the traditional powerhouses, so. But it's, I know this sounds very cliche, but it is very much a process, especially with freshmen, to try to get them to understand the intensity of it, the mental side of it. I would say, probably above the neck is 80% of this game, is really is understanding where you're supposed to be, what are you saying, all those kind of things. But they're coming along, really well, and it's good to see. The practices have been competitive, and one of the things as a coach you kind of worry about is there's a little stretch where the novelty of practice wears off, and all they're doing is it's UIW versus UIW, and sometimes they can get a little bit bored with that, and it just, but that really hasn't, I'm probably knock on wood, that hasn't set in yet, and we can't, for NCAA rules, I can't tell you who we're scrimmaging, but we actually have a Division I opponent that we're playing on October 22nd, and then another one on October 29th, so I think that'll be fun for them, just to quit beating on themselves, play somebody different, and even just the process of preparing for an opponent, I think will be it'll be a new challenge, something they didn't really experience quite the same at the high school level.
That game environment is totally different. It's not something you can replicate in practice, no matter how much you try, right? So it's great that they're getting this opportunity to play these intense teams,
That's right.
these powerhouse teams.
And two of these two particular opponents, and even in the scrimmages alone, have a lot of returning players back. They both had good seasons, so it'll get our attention in a hurry, but that's good. I think I'd rather do that than blow somebody out, and I think you've got to, obviously the non-conference schedule and the scrimmages and all that it's really just trying to prepare you for conference, and it's going to be, conference is going to be unique. Lamar, of course, is back. Texas A&M Commerce, who's been a Division II powerhouse, they are transitioning to Division I, so they're in the Southland. So, so it's going to be some new teams, that we haven't seen in a few years, in the case of Lamar or in Commerce at all, so, but, and a lot of the top teams have their majority of their best players back, so it's definitely going to be a challenge for sure.
Is that kind of why you go in to the conference and you're playing teams like Baylor,
right,
Texas Tech, TCU, to not necessarily win the game,
right,
but it's to challenge the team and learn about your team. So when it comes conference play, they're tested
that's
and ready
exactly
to roll.
Right. Yeah, like you're going to see different styles of play. There's going to be teams that are going to press us, for 40 minutes. Well, you're going to be ready for that. Now when we get to conference, and as you can imagine, we do that all the time. Once we're getting to January and February, we'll literally be referencing, hey, remember that time? Remember at SMU, they did this. And it helps, kind of trigger some things mentally as well, too. But you do want a variety of looks, from your opponents. And you know the challenge. Obviously, when you're playing Big 12 opponents and what you're looking at there. But, at the same time, one of the things we try to kind of sell them on or get them fired up about is like, look, you probably didn't have the opportunity to go to Baylor or Texas Tech, or TCU. Well, here's your chance. Go see what you can do against these players. And obviously as a coach, we're trying to focus not so much on the final score, but just, hey, let's win this 5 minutes, right here or whatever it might be. But like I said, I think, as long as you come out of it, you're not demoralized or anything,
Exactly.
nobody gets hurt, then we'll be fine. You keep it in perspective.
And for you with this program, it's not just the on-court
Right.
success. It's about the off-court just
Yeah.
as much. I mean, a big emphasis for you is community service.
Yeah.
Y'all won the Southland Community Service Award. This year, y'all have just under 300 service hours
Right.
going to San Antonio Food Bank, Boys and Girls Club, Haven for Hope. Why is, as well as academic excellence, why is that so important, as well as getting into community?
Well, it's obviously a big part of the mission of UIW, and we're very fortunate. Our coordinator of life skills, who happens to be here this evening, Mandy Polito, so shout out to Mandy. But Mandy and our assistant coach, Rachel Beatty, work hand in hand in setting up these opportunities for our young ladies. And we try to, there's also sometimes you got to remember how fortunate you are,
Mm-hmm.
and you kind of see those kind of things when you go to the San Antonio Food Bank or, different opportunities that we've had and essentially kind of give back, to the community as well too. But and our players have been phenomenal, embracing, the opportunity. I think this last year, again, a non-COVID year for the most part, I think the average player on our team did 30 hours of community service,
awesome.
And over 400 hours altogether. I think this year at the moment we're already at, I want to say 21 hours, per player. So that's neat to see. And and again, you are trying to develop the whole person. This isn't, again, yeah, we want to win games. Yeah, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. And it's great to bring home a championship trophy and a net and all that. But you do have to kind of be trying to develop them and hopefully be as well-rounded as possible. And when they leave UIW and being an ambassador, for the university and the department, and the other piece of it is the academic side. We were really fortunate last year. Every single player was above a 3.0. Team GPA, I think, was a 3.32. So all these freshmen, they got their work cut out for them. But so we'll see. But they're off to a pretty good start. But and I will say that's one of the things that in coaching women's basketball over the years, that in most cases they have a pretty good understanding of what their future is, and they're not delusional, about playing professionally and that kind of thing. And they understand the big picture, in terms of getting their degree, beefing up their resume, if you will, preparing themselves for grad school or med school or whatever the case may be. And we've actually have two that will be in med school. Actually, the second one, Jamie Means, will be starting this summer. And then we have another one, Victoria Jackson, who's going to UIW's med school as we speak, too. So it's it's fun to be a part of that. Like I said, winning games is great, but you got to look at the big picture as well.
That's awesome, and you see most of the team is out here. It seems like it's already coming together, and I mean they're spending so much time together. Even in those just instances of going to serve, I feel like you create. Those are the memories that you remember most versus on the court memories.
You're right, and again, I know people toss this word around a lot with this term culture, but that's a big part of our culture here. Is again, I talked about the academic success, but also like I said, the community service and the engagement, and obviously we do it. More often than not, collectively, it's the whole program. It's all the coaches, all the players. So I think it's good for them, like I said, to be around each other in a different setting, not just on the court, going after each other and banging on each other for 2 hours and whatnot. So kind of, like I said, more of a relaxed setting. And again, I think it's good for morale and those kind of things. And like you said, those are the memories that they're going to have, the funny thing that happened on a bus trip, to Lake Charles or whatever it might be. And like I said, it's a lot of times you're probably not really going to remember that many games when you get right down to it.
Sometimes you get to know people a lot better off the court, when they're in a more relaxed environment and, their interests, things like that. Complete team building, I can imagine. So like you said, you've had tons of time with coaching women's basketball. What is something that's different and unique about this team versus other teams you've coached in the past?
Well, that's a tough one to answer because we haven't played a game yet.
Right.
Like I said, I'm not trying to be totally redundant, but just how well they like each other. I mean, and this may sound horribly sexist to say, Katie, but you were a former female student athlete, but it helps. It really helps when they like each other.
It
and
does.
the day-to-day, I'm sure you felt that as a player, and I can tell you as a coach that it makes a world of difference when, like I said, when they genuinely they're pushing each other. It's competitive in practice. But there's no agenda, there's no ill will, there's nobody's being selfish or anything like that too, and it's one of those things that I know it's not you can't find it on a stat sheet, but it matters, and going back to last year's team, for us to win 4 games in 4 days, if your culture isn't set up to do that, that doesn't happen, with that kind of stress and pressure and everything else that. So again, it's each team has a unique personality, for sure from year to year. But a lot of it is, I'm not going to lie to you, having 6 freshmen and international transfers and whatnot. It's been kind of an eclectic group that we have here.
When you say that reminds me of the Spurs and the culture that they have.
Right.
There's no single superstars. Everybody's passing. They're not greedy with the ball, right? So I think that's best kind of culture you can cultivate, get a widespread, amazing team versus relying solely on one person. But I do have to ask, and I know it's early in the season, but are there any standouts, anybody that we should be keeping our eye on whenever we're calling these games?
They really literally go 1 through
list?
14. Yeah, I mean, if you look at, obviously they're not going to lie. We're expecting more out of returning players. They know it. I know it. We all know it.
Right.
But I look at somebody like Destiny Terrell, who just has grown, each year she's in the program, and her this past year as a sophomore, we're going up against McNeese State, in the quarterfinals of the conference tournament. She goes for 24 points and 19 rebounds, and Destiny's maybe 5'9", but just a tremendous competitor and just fearless, and how hard she plays and everything. Some of the other young ladies that. Chloe Storr, I've referenced, being from Australia, the ascent that she has made. She got thrown into a really tough situation going into the conference tournament. Unfortunately, we had 2 players that had season-ending injuries that played what you refer to as the 4, and Chloe really hadn't even played it all season, barely practiced it. I think we gave her 3 days of practice going into the tournament and said, all right, figure it out. And if somebody gets in foul trouble in that first game, she comes off the bench, plays 24 minutes. You reference the buzzer beater. Like we don't win that game. If Chloe Storr doesn't step up, the way that she did. Then obviously there's even, and as I'm looking at the table, I know I'm thinking, I'm remembering plays that they made. Myra Bell being from San Antonio, obviously in her 3rd year. Zaya Price, also in her third year, has shown a ton of improvement on this year's team. Same with Hannah Wheeler, again, another junior. Brenna Perez, from Veterans Memorial here locally. So that group I just mentioned, they were all freshmen. They're juniors now. 2 years ago, they were all freshmen. So to see, like I said, the progression they've made is really exciting, and how their game has evolved, and just even kind of stepping up into more of a leadership role, that they've had to. And then the transfers, I referenced Nina De Leon Negron from Puerto Rico, started every game this past year at Austin P as a sophomore. So she's come in and also really asserted herself from day one. Juliana, from Bulgaria, like I said, a post player that I think is really going to fit in well with what we're doing in our offense. And then the 6 freshmen, they've all had days where you would never think they were a freshman. They've had days where they're clearly a freshman, but they really have come along well, and they're figuring it out, and it's a whole nother level, in terms of how competitive, and like I said earlier, the intensity of it, the terminology, the set plays. There's a lot more that people don't necessarily always understand, that goes into it, and they're smart enough to kind of follow the lead of the upperclassmen, and like I said, in the upperclassmen have done a great job of kind of showing them the way.
Well, and last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, because you're from the West Coast, went to alma mater was Oregon.
That's right.
But you told me you're a big Los Angeles Dodgers fan.
Yeah,
so
we got a game in literally 2 hours from now.
Despite being in Texas, and I don't know if our crowd's Astros fans or Rangers fan, but I'm going to test that photographic memory. What is your favorite Dodgers moment?
Wow. They did win the World Series a couple years ago.
And that was recent.
That was a COVID-shortened season. But see, that particular year, the Astros had already been busted for the cheating, scandal, because they had beat the Dodgers a year or two before with their cheating. Not a fan of the Astros, if you hadn't noticed. But there's so many, Sam. The Dodgers over the years. But they won 111 games this year. That's kind of special. But they have the problem is they don't win many World Series. They're great in the regular season, but not necessarily in October. So this is the year. This is the year. Yeah, we got Kershaw on the mound tonight. We're in good shape. So
you think it's going to be a Dodgers Astros World Series?
I'd be okay with that. I think we're on to them. I don't think they're going to be banging on trash cans anymore to tip off the pitches and that kind of thing. So
and I think
we would like that revenge.
And I think it might end up early enough where you might be able to go to a game.
That's a thought. That is a thought. I may have to tweak our practice schedule around a little bit to make that happen. So
that's awesome. Well, Coach Dow, thank you very much for spending some time with us. Katie, for me and Katie, thank you for tuning in on YouTube or here in Broadway 50/50. Coach Dow, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next time.
All right, thank you.